Shalom Aleichem, everybody. We're up to Daf Chaf Zayin, and we finished on Daf Chaf Amud Beis by the memory of Shmuel. Shmuel said that if the kohen puts the dam shaloi b'mekoymai on the mizbeach, but not in the exact location where the Torah says you should put the dam, the basar is pasal b'achila, but it's still mechaper. The zrik is mechaper on the bailam. All you need is al gabe mizbeach, right? Lechaper. V'ani nesatim lechem ala mizbeach lechaper. We learn from a pasuk. Only lechaper, but not la'achila. Gemara asked from the Mishnah later, Lamed Beis, it's mashma over there that if somebody is zorik the dam shaloi b'mekoymai, you can be mekabel the dam again from the par, from the carbon, and then be zorik it again. Gemara had a problem with that. According to Shmuel, if the first zrika is registered because shaloi b'mekoymai is mekoymai dami, then the second zrika is not going to work, right? You can't do a second zrika on the same carbon if the first zrika already registered. Gemara wanted to say no, it didn't register because it's a puzzle. The Gemara says if it's a puzzle person that did the zrika or did the kabbalah, then it should be dochoy. You shouldn't be able to take more dam from the par and do it again because it's dochoy. The Gemara brought a raya for dochoy that it doesn't work by zrika, only by kabbalah. But a kapanim, we're in a bind on Shmuel. Shmuel says shloim b'mekayim is k'mekayimai, and it works for kapara. And later we see that even if it's shloim b'mekayim, you could do it again. If you could do it again, I'm repeating myself, but just to chazir it, if you could do it again, then must be that the first time it didn't work. So you see, shloim b'mekayim is lav k'mekayimai, not like Shmuel. Elamai rule it's k'mekayimai, but apostle did it. If apostle did it by zrika, it should be dochoy. Shouldn't be able to do it again either. So the Gemara says no. The reason why you're not able to do it again, the raya from dochoy, that you're not able to do it again when apostle does it, because also the apostle of machshava, right? There were two negatives there. First of all, apostle was Zayrik the Dam, plus he had a machshava psula b'shas Zrika's Dam. Gemara says, whoa, if you have two negatives, double negative, and that's why Zrika doesn't work, Yachi Kabbalah Nami. Kabbalah should also be the same issue. V'oid mi pasla machshava, does machshava really pasel? The guy's apostle, so his machshava doesn't even count. So it's not two negatives, not a double negative. The second negative doesn't even register because he's not roy lavoida. Gemara says, Elo, ema shachtayloi. The whole makar of the Gemara that zrika becomes dochoy if apostle is zerikit is from the diak in the Mishnah later, because the Mishnah says that if he was mekabelit chutz l'zman chutz l'mekaymai, then he can be yachzer akosher v'yekabel. Mashma zrika not. The Gemara says no. Truth is, even zrika you could. So what's it coming to my mind? Kabbalah is ma'agat alayim shachteloi shchita not. Ma'ika mashma the pasla machshava. That machshava pasels tanina. Lafika chen poisla b'machshava. Right, the reason why shchita would be a problem, it's only Kabbalah and Zrika that there's no problem of machshava. And there's no issue of dochoy. Because he's not roy lavoida. Kabbalah and Zrika, Hashem avoida, he's not roy lavoida. But shchita, even azar is ksheira b'shchitas kosher deshecht, and therefore, and therefore machshava passes of it because we're lavoida. Gemara says Tanina. We also learned chen pasla machshava. Yeah, it's already a Mishnah. Kamashma the mekabala ve'elech lepasla machshava. This chiddush is that mekabala ve'elech machshava doesn't pasla. My time Rava, like Rava says, because you have to be roy lavoida in order to pasla b'machshava. You know, you're a nobody. Who do you mamisha? You're not even shaykh to this avoidus. If you're not shaykh to the avoidus, the machshava can't passel by someone who is not shaykh to avoidus, not real avoidus. Gemara says, Meisavei, fragt die Gemara, kasha on shita Shmuel. Meisavei, from a brayso. It says, a kohen that was ovad, the avoida, let's say shchita, kabbalah lacha, the first three of the avoidus, the four avoidus, chishev, litenas, haniton l'mayla, mata l'mayla, the alter, kosher. If he had a machshava to be zoyreket shaloi b'mekaymai la'alter, that's a carbon kosher. right? Pigul only happens with a machshava chutz l'zmanoi, or chutz l'mekaymai, that's puzzle. But to be zoyrik the dam on the mizbeach, l'mayla instead of lamata, lamata instead of l'mayla, there's no din machshava that passes a carbon. That's the brisa. Chishav litnes adam nitanu l'mayla lamata l'mayla la'alter kosher. If it's la'alter, then it's kosher, meaning ba'isa hayayim. It's still the same day. Chazer v'chishev chutz l'mekaymai, but let's say by the next avodah, so by halacha, you started thinking chutz l'mekaymai, then it passes the carbon. Ve'en by kares, like the halacha of machshava chutz l'mekaymai. Chutz l'zmanai pigul l'chayav of kares, but chutz l'zmanai because mamish pigul and yichayiv kares. What happens if he thought this is all the altar? Okay, so with the first machshava he didn't pass it yet. The second machshava of chutz l'mekaymai passes it, and by the third, let's say by shchita he had a machshava of nitanu l'mayla l'mata, doesn't pass it. Then by halacha he had a machshava of chutz l'mekaymai at pasal va'im bekaris, and then by Kabbalah he had that, and by halacha he had the machshava of chutz l'zmani, that becomes pig v'chayav and karis. What happens if in the beginning by shchita he was chayshev, he thought to put the dam, to be zarik the dam, shaloi b'mekaymai l'mashal, if it's l'mayla he puts it l'mata l'machar the next day. Then the carbon becomes pasal. Okay, we'll talk in a moment about why it's possible. Chazav v'chishev bein chutz l'bana v'chitz v'kovet possible ve'im bekaris. And if, let's say, by the next step of the avodah, he was choishev to eat it chutz l'zmanai or eat it chutz l'mekaymai, it's possible ve'im bekaris. Why? Because the carbon became possible already b'machshava rishayna, because the machshava rishayna passed the carbon, because he was chashav litenas adam shaloi b'mekayim l'machar. He wanted to put the dam shaloi b'makim wherever the Torah prescribed the exact location of putting the dam on the mizbeach. He wanted to put it l'machar, and therefore the carbon was already possible. We'll see in a moment why. Why tak is it possible? But it was possible. It was possible already, and now it cannot become. It can't be chal the psul of pigul on top of that. Now the Gemara says, why is it possible if the first machshava was to put it chutz l'mekaymai on the mizbeach l'machar? V'ish l'mekaymai damai, hai possible pigul hu. If the halacha is shloi b'mekaymai k'mekaymai, which means that the machshava was to be machal, right? Pigul is always with regard to a machshava with regard to achilas mizbeach. Zrika is considered an achilas mizbeach. So if the machshava is to be machal the mizbeach chutz l'zmanoi, right? Because he's thinking, let me put the dam instead of lamata lamayla, lamachar tomorrow, which means it's a machshavas pigul. So why is it only pasul pigulu? Razach zrika the sharia basar b'achila ma'isel de pigul, zrika the sharia basar b'achila ma'isel de pigul. So here's a chiddush in pigul. The only time you have a din pigul, you could be meichel a din pigul on a carbon is if the achilas mizbeach, which means the zrika, otherwise would have been matir the achila. But here, anyways, the zrika wouldn't have been matter the carbon ba'achila. Why not? Because he's putting it in the wrong place. Therefore, this doesn't constitute pigul. How do you know this? How do you know this chiddush that pigul is only chal on basar that's sharia ba'achila? You know how I know the chsivim? Ochel ya'ochel mepsar zevach shlama pigul yeh. Misha pigula gorem loy, only a pigul that's goyim the isra achila. Yatsa she'en pigul gorem loy, the less davar acher gorem loy. The reason why it's asr b'achila is because you put it chutz l'mekayim on the mizbeach. You put it lamata lamayla or lamayla lamata. So here it was already asr b'achila without pigul. So since it's asr b'achila without pigul, and pigul is not goyim the isra achila, therefore there's no chiyuv pigul. You want to say yachi yefsul and amel lefsul? Say bazoi, why is it possible? Why is it possible if it's not pigul? What's the problem if it's lamachar? Anyways, you're telling me lamachar doesn't trigger a chiyuv pigul. So if it doesn't trigger a chiyuv pigul, so what's the issue? Because shloim b'mekaymai, Shmuel says shloim b'mekaymai is k'mekaymai dami. Rav Nachman Yitzchak midah have machshevas hinuach. V'ali b'd Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda holds that if you leave over dam until the next day, that itself is a psul, and that's why it's possible. So really, Shmuel is right. Shloim b'mekaymai is k'mekaymai dami. And there's no din pigul, only if pigul is goydem the isra achila. And therefore it's not pigul. So why is it possible b'chalal? And the answer is because the Brisa holds like Rabbi Yehuda that machshev senuach, if you leave over dam until the next day, it passes the carbon. Shlokish amar la'olam pasal mamish. If you learn our Mishnah, Mishnah doesn't just mean that it's possible ba'achila. It's actually possible mamish, and the bailam is not neskaper. And he agrees to Shmuel in theory in halacha that shloi mekayim is kemekayim. So why is the Mishnah, when the Mishnah says possible, it means possible and the bailam is not neskaper? V'loi kasha kan shenosan b'shtika kan shenosan ba'amira. The pasuk, when the pasuk says that sheloi b'mekaymai k'mekaymai and it's mechaper, as long as it's on the mizbeach, it doesn't matter where on the mizbeach, it's still mechaper, right? That's when shenosan b'shtika. He didn't have an additional machshava that passes. Kan shenosan b'amira, but here in the Mishnah, it's not just that he's doing it sheloi b'mekaymai, sheloi b'makam the mizbeach, and not in the prescribed location where the Torah says you should put the dam. Shenosan b'amira, the kohen said beyond, besides for putting the dam in a different location on the mizbeach, he also has a machshava to eat it chutz l'zmanoi. So therefore, that machshava helps to passel the korban legamri. Why is it only passel the korban and it doesn't become pigul? We said because pigul it can only become pigul if the zrika would have been matir the basar b'achila, but here anyways would not be matir the basar b'achila because it's shaloi b'mekaymai in the mizbeach. So therefore, it doesn't become pigul, but it still becomes pasul. The Gemara already asked. So why does it become pasul altogether? If shaloi b'mekaymai is k'mekaymai and it doesn't become pigul because the pigul is not goyim the isra achila, so why has it become pasul? So the Gemara already said machsheva senuach v'aliber de Rabbi Yehuda. Which is very difficult because if it's machsheva senuach, if machsheva senuach passes the korban, I guess Shmuel would have, the Rish Lakish would have to hold like a Rabbi Yehuda here as well. Okay, this is a difficult Gemara. So the Gemara weiter. Tanan. Chishav litness in the tunnel lamata lamayla lamata ad midi to have a machsheva senuach v'li b'di Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara already says this is okay. You have to go through the whole sugya, like we went through in Shmuel. Rabbi Yochanan says idi v'idi shnasan b'shtika. Could be this Mishnah and the next Mishnah are all talking about where there was no machshavas psul. The truth is, Rabbi Yochanan is chaylik on Shmuel and Rish Lakish. He says that avada, if the kohen puts it on the wrong place of the mizbeach, it's not mechaper for the bailam. This Mishnah that says that you could be mekabel the dam again and do it again, that's the ikadam nefesh. There's still dam nefesh. There's still some dam left, and you could be mashlam the avoida by being mekabel it again and being zarek it again. Hod the lekadam nefesh, and the Mishnah. Our Mishnah that says carbon is possible, it means possible legamri, the lekadama nefesh. Okay, very simple. Gemara says, Nan, possible the ein beikaris, Bishlam the Rish Lakish, Hain diktani possible the ein beikaris. I understand when it says possible the ein beikaris, Rish Lakish says, because the zrika wouldn't be matir the achila. So the chiddush of the Mishnah is that even though he has a machshavas psul, it doesn't. The carbon does not become pigul. Ella Rabbi Yochanan, my aim by kares. Why should you be mechuyev kares shlei b'mekaymai? Rabbi Yochanan learns the Mishnah, this Mishnah and the next Mishnah, where it's not talking about where there was a machshavas psul of chutz l'zmanai. So if there's no machshavas psul chutz l'zmanai, so what would be the havamin of aim by kares? According to Rish Lakish, where's the machshavas psul chutz l'zmanai in addition to the shlei b'mekaymai the mizbeach? So now I understand why the Mishnah has to tell me ein by kares, because to tell you the chiddush that only if the pigel is goyrim the Isra Achila, but if it's not goyrim the Isra Achila, it was already Osra B'Achila without it, because it's Shloi B'Makam HaMizbeach, it's not the right place in the Mizbeach, so why does the Mishnah have to say Ein B'Koros? Where's this Kasha? That's Taka Kasha. V'Lishmuel May Ein B'Koros. According to Shmuel, that Taka learned our Mishnah, that it's talking about where there is no Machshavas, Psul, and that was how he answered the steer in Mishnayos. So how is he going to learn the Chiddush Ein B'Koros? Achikam, I'm not Machshavas Psul, the Ein B'Koros. You have to insert that in the Mishnah afterwards. If you're talking about it's Shloi Mekom is Lavka Mekom, so let him gather up the dam again, because the halacha is if the dam already reached the klisharis and then it spills, you're allowed to gather it up and continue the avodah. So if Shloi Mekom is Lavka Mekom and you had it already in the klisharis, you sprinkle it on the wrong place in the mizbeach, let him do it again. So like man Omer lo yasfenu. He holds like man Omer that you're not allowed to. Let's see what did it with it. Left hand, Rashi says, or machshavas psul lo yasfenu. Right, that for sure you can't take it again and do it again. Right, if you did it wrong, you put it in the wrong place. Rabbi Yoel lo yasfenu. Rabbi Shimon Omer yasfenu, machlokas tanoim whether you could do it again, and Rabbi Yochanan will hold like the Mandamer that says lo yasfenu. Mishnah Seinu Ketiv Omer lo yasfenu. That's how he's going to learn it. Rav Chizda Omer Avimi hakoil moiden. Different gears in the machlokas. Hakoil moiden netan lamata shnesan lamayla shlo yasfenu. V'chol shkem netan lamayla shnesan lamata hol v'dom yonim lamata and boin. V'nechlo kelo netan lafnim shnesan v'chutz shnesan lafnim shnebi Yosem yasfenu. Rav Shimon Omer lo yasfenu. Okay, so the machlokas is, if let's say he took dam that's supposed to be nizrak in the mizbech achitz and he put it in the mizbech apnimi, or vice versa, that's a shayla if he can be yasfenu or not. Omar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak afanan nami tanina. Yeah, we also learned like Rabbi Yochanan, who's mamad the Mishnah, that dam shenit and shaloi b'mekaymoi, even though it's not mechaper, right? That's what he holds. Still, it's nikla the mizbech is koilatit, and you can't gather it up a second time. There are three karbanas psulim when it comes to oila. Prat l'nishchata balayla. Oila was shechted at night. V'shenishpach dama v'shiyot dama chutz l'kloim. Or it was nishpach dama, or the dam went out chutz l'kloim. Also, teired that even if it goes onto the mizbeach, right? Oila shenishchata balayla, and then nishpach dama or yotz dama chutz l'kloim. Also teired. Right, all the avorim that you're makter from this these karbonis psulim have to be removed from the mizbeach. Shimon says, "Oila inni elo oila ksheira minayin l'rabes nishcha b'lav nishcha b'lav yatzum b'dam chutz l'kloim v'halon." Yeah, v'halon v'hayotzei v'hatam v'shnishcha chutz man chutz l'makav v'shikibul psul v'zark v'zdamba v'ntar l'mayla shnas l'mata v'ntar l'mata shnas l'mayla v'ntar l'mata shnas l'machod v'ntar l'machod shnas l'machod v'apez v'chaz shachar l'shma minayin that you don't take it off the mizbeach with all these psulim. Let's say you have all these karbonis psulim we just mentioned, that you don't take it off the mizbeach. It's niklat tamid loimer toiras ha'oil riba toira achas t'chala oil l'shem olu lo yeridu. Yochsh nimar ba'afer reveh v'nibra v'muktzeh v'nevad v'esna v'mchiv v'klayim v'trep v'yotzedofen tamid loimer zois. Maris l'rabas is elu, l'hoitz is elu, marabani is elu, shei psul v'kodesh, moitzin is elu, shloi psul v'kodesh. Any carbon that the psul happened by kodesh, the halacha is that once it gets onto the mizbeach, right, shaloi kedin, you're not allowed to, but if the mizbeach was koilatit, you don't take it off anymore. Any carbon that the psul came before it entered b'kodesh, then the halacha is you have to be moired it. But what do you see from the Ektonimiyah? What do you see from the Pshem? And And the Nacholik, my time, Lavashim Tekalta Mizbeach, Shma Mina, Lo Yasfenu. You don't take it off anymore. Okay. Omer Elazar. Okay. Mizbeach Apnimi Mekadesh Psulin. Yeah, the Mizbeach Pnimi is also Mekadesh Psulin, and you're not moirid if you put the carbon onto the Mizbeach Pnimi. Even though the whole Makar is from Zois Toiris Ha'oila, Hiya Oila, which we just said in the previous brisa, still, and that's by Mizbeach HaChitzon, still, this also applies to Mizbeach HaPnimi. That's your Beloz's Chiddush. Mai Kamashno Tanina, Hanetonim B'Fnim, Ima Asav Menem Eladam Dechazilei, Aval Koimet Deloichaz Le'em Eloi, Kamash Mulan. He's telling us by Kemitza is the same halacha, even though we know that Chutz Shenasna B'Fnim, or Fnim Shenasna B'Chutz, the halacha is that you're not moirid, but even with regard to Kemitza. Meisevei K'toides Zora Sha'olo, L'gabe Mizbeach, Teidet, She'en L'cho Mekadesh P'sul, Mizbeach Chitzen B'roi, L'chitzen En P'nimi Loi. So you see, Stira to Rebbe Lazar. Stira to Rebbe Lazar. Sounds like koimitz, you're not allowed to. Yeah. You would take it off on the pnimi. Gemara says Torah tzach. K'toyre zer sh'alsam mizbeach hachitzin teiret she'en mizbeach hachitzin mekadesh p'sulin el roiloi v'mizbia v'mepnimi bein roiloi bein she'en roiloi. My time ahai ritzpo v'hai klisharis. So the kedusha of the mizbeach hapnimi is much more chamor. It's klisharis, and therefore it can be mekadesh karbonas, even karbonas she'enem ru'uyim loi. It's a chiluk when Mizbeach Chitzon and Mizbeach Pnimi. Mizbeach Chitzon can only be Mekadesh, only something that's royaloi. Okay, we'll stop over here.